So welcome to our presentation, What the Oysters Learned Too Late, Reconsidering Literacy. My name is Audrey Powers, and I'm from the University of South Florida. I'm the Associate Librarian for College of the Arts.
And my name is Mark Powers, and I'm the Director of the School of Theater and Dance at the University of South Florida. And for the past 30 years, also an accreditation visitor. So I've seen a ton of different libraries in my role, but also for the past 4 years, I've been on the General Education Reconstructing Committee for University of South Florida. And as you may have guessed, we are married, so we are going to do this presentation as most good married couples would. We're going to continually interrupt each other. So rather than one of us and then the other speak. So there you go.
The traditional definition of literacy, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, is the quality, condition, or state of being literate, the ability to read and write. UNESCO has been a champion for the promotion of literacy as a human right. Their current definition of literacy is the ability to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate, and compute using printed and written materials associated with varying contexts. The literacy involves a continuum of learning and enabling individuals to achieve their goal, to develop their knowledge and potential, and to participate fully in their community and a wider society. We are proposing that the definition for literacy in the new millennium is about how humans process and evaluate information from multiple contexts, not only printed and written materials, and the mastery of multiple literacies is crucial.
It's important to note that literacy by the old definition is based on the post-printing press assumption that the best means of disseminating information and ideas was through written text. However, a significant amount is communicated orally. And according to Albert Moravian, in oral communication, our understanding of the meaning and emotion is based only 7% on text, 38% on the tone and music of the voice, and 55% on body language. Now, this is not commonly understood or even accepted. For example, from my own personal experience, grad students in English Lit have complained for years about actors, and particularly when we perform Shakespeare. And that complaint is typically, why do you always have to interpret? Why can't you just perform it as it was written? Which, of course, is impossible.
Today we communicate in many different ways. Ideas are communicated via YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Tumblr, Reddit, Quora, Vimeo,
and Twitter, of course.
Social media includes social networking sites, social review sites, image sharing sites, video sharing sites, video posting sites, community blogs, and information exchange sites. And as a result, the ability to assess various modes of communication is important. Literacy in the new millennium is about how humans process and evaluate information from multiple contexts. The current focuses on subsets of literacy: data literacy, digital literacy, numeracy, media literacy, information literacy, computer literacy, and visual literacy. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Now, there's a significant and increasing need to be able to understand and accurately interpret not only graphs and charts, photographs, media, and other visuals, but sound and movement as well. And currently, in higher education, we're going through a process of being redesigned from focusing on specific bodies of knowledge or disciplines to mastering the skills of varying modes of inquiry. And along with that, expanding the focus on the ability to communicate knowledge from traditional term papers to oral presentations and poster sessions, and now to YouTube videos and artistic responses, to focusing on job skills, to the growth of badging and practice-based learning, to relating the value of a degree to the average income or the income range of graduates. And as a result, the curricula in most disciplines have been redesigned to address those concerns. And there's also been a significant growth of interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary degrees and certificates. And additionally, the STEM versus STEAM valuing of the humanities and arts has established clear differences between universities. And this has also resulted in significant changes to general education curricula and how they are assessed, focusing less on the traditional liberal arts variety of content by discipline and more on the development of knowledge-based skills.
Do our collections support this new paradigm? I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm posing that to you.
Should we be focused on the mastery of content, the mastery of knowledge-based skills, or the mastery of literacies? In an age where interdisciplinary study is growing, mastery of multiple literacies in multiple contexts is crucial. Knowledge-based skills focus on the ability to employ a variety of methods and the demonstration of that through student learning outcomes. The Association of American Colleges and Universities has developed extensive value rubrics primarily for knowledge-based skills, but also includes a few literacies. Although it is interesting to note that the focus of the outcomes for the literacies is on the demonstration of skills rather than the development of conceptual understanding. The teaching of literacies needs to also focus on the development of more profound information gathering and understanding techniques. To compare this to textual literacy, you need to understand how to both read and write. Traditionally, within all disciplines, textual literacy has been a common thread. To a varying degree, each discipline includes one or more of the other literacies.
As we've previously mentioned, there are many types of literacies being promoted today. Data literacy, information literacy, media literacy, digital literacy, computer literacy, numeracy, and others that are being proposed are cultural literacy, geoliteracy, science literacy, statistical, emotional, financial, and gender literacy.
And four literacies that are the main focus of this presentation, in large part because they predate text as a means of communicating ideas. Visual literacy, oral literacy, kinesthetic literacy, and spatial literacy. Visual literacy is the ability to interpret, negotiate, and make meaning from information presented in the form of an image, extending the meaning of literacy, which commonly signifies interpretation of a written or printed text. Visual literacy is based on the idea that pictures can be read and that meaning can be through a process of reading. The basic objective elements are line, shape, form, value, texture, color, space, composition, and perspective. The subjective elements have to do with interpretations of a subject matter, the context in which the image is seen, and the viewer's emotional state and depth of knowledge.
In the introduction to ACRL's Visual Literacy Standards for Higher Education, it is stated, the importance of images and visual media in contemporary culture is changing what it means to be literate in the 21st century. Today's society is highly visual, and visual imagery is no longer supplemental to other forms of information. New digital technologies have made it possible for almost anyone to create and share visual media. Yet the pervasiveness of images and visual media does not necessarily mean that individuals are able to critically view, use, and produce visual content. Individuals must develop these essential skills in order to engage capably in a visually oriented society. Visual literacy empowers individuals to participate fully in a visual culture. When I went to a workshop this summer given by Edward Tufte, and that was in Boston, on data and visual presentations, one of the things I learned was to put visual image elements in context. For example, in 1953, when Watson and Crick identified the structure of DNA, they constructed a model that included a label with the measurement scale of 0 to 10 angstroms. You can see that down here. An angstrom is a unit of length used to express wavelengths in interatomic distances. Shouldn't most explanatory images show a measurement scale? This helps us to understand the image and turns a piece of visual information into evidence. I saw this image on social media and I immediately liked it. Can you tell what it is? Anybody?
Is it a foot?
Very good. It's a diving beetle's foot. It's called Coleoptera. There are 800,000 species of beetles. Wouldn't a label showing the measurement scale have been helpful? The beetle's foot is 20 micrometers. This is equivalent to the diameter of a human hair.
A lot of color.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oral literacy focuses on the language of sound, which conveys emotional, cultural, and intellectual meaning through objective structural features such as tempo, motor scale, loudness, melody, the linear succession of tones, or rhythm, the recurring pattern of beats, as well as through subjective elements, performative features. Who is performing? What's the level of virtuosity, range, emotional connection to the material? Listener features. What their emotional state is at the time of hearing, their intellect, as well as their foreknowledge of what they're hearing and their expectations. And contextual features of time, place, and circumstance that express cultural, social, and historical ideas, as well as connections to external events. When Jaws was first released in 1975, the simple two-note motif created a sense of danger, and its increase in tempo established a sense of impending doom, all before we saw the shark for the first time. That haunting music was subliminally heard by beachgoers that entire summer, who stayed out of the water in droves while scanning the horizon for a fin. I was one of them. So 30 years later, Jaws composer John Williams was conducting the Boston Pops. He cued the bassoon, and when that two-note motif was heard, there was this ripple of laughter through the audience. The listener and contextual features had transformed the meaning of the motif. Kinesthetic literacy, as this cartoon clearly communicates, may be one of the most difficult to understand. Kinesthetic literacy focuses on the language of movement, which conveys emotional, cultural, and intellectual meaning through the objective structural elements of weight, time, space, and flow. These elements were codified by Rudolf Laban in the 1930s as a means of notating dance, but were also used to assess assembly line workers for matching the efforts necessary for specific physical tasks to an individual's natural movement ability. And then later, by us actors, to establish the physicalization as well as vocalization of characters. Choreographers also employ linear sequence and rhythms in your head. There we go.
Sorry about that.
And rhythm as objective elements. The same subjective elements as in oral literacy apply to kinesthetic literacy. Performative and listener or viewer and contextual features. Choreography is an intentional activity, intentional defined as with meaning. It results in meaningful movement, which is capable of communicating life issues. This work by Alvin Ailey premiered 60 years ago, and including oral and visual and kinesthetic elements from the full 200 years preceding that. And it has remained contextually relevant as a contemporary work in their repertoire. It is considered the epitome of the African American experience. And I just want to watch for a moment longer, because this is like one of the most beautiful moments in dance. I figure you ought to have at least a few moments of not listening to us, but watching something fantastic.
My favorite part.
Yeah. If you've ever danced, you know that's almost impossible to do that. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Diversion time.
Hold on a second, Dan. There we go. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You like it?
Slideshow.
Yeah, you gotta get that for this page.
There we go.
All right. Okay. Can you get rid of these? Go to the next slide. There you go.
All right. Okay. The Seattle Public Library's Central Library is an 11-story glass and steel structure in downtown Seattle that is 363,000 square feet. Has anybody been there? Oh, yay. It can house 1.5 million resources and has 400 computers. Over 2 million people visited the first year it opened. In the process of its design, the library leadership and architects considered many elements. How does space syntax or spatial configuration affect your aesthetic and emotional appraisal? Space syntax quantifies inhabited space by exploring spatial configuration, social meaning, and is a good predictor of human patterns of movement. How was wayfinding experienced at the Seattle Public Library? In this case, participants were asked to choose adjectives that describe their aesthetic and emotional experience. Adjectives such as impressive, creative, stimulating, and innovative were used to describe their experience. But some people said it was inconsistent, overwhelming, frustrating, intimidating, and even stressful.
There are multiple variables to be considered for spatial literacy. Again, both objective and subjective. Cultural and social meaning, human and environmental interaction, selection and an arrangement of environmental characteristics, complexity, legibility and coherence in terms of the order and the organization, and mystery, a sense of the unexpected. Transliteracy, thrown a new one into the bunch, refers to a collection of literacies that become interconnected and virtually inseparable in a field of study. In this example, my field, theater, which typically employs 7 literacies. Textual, the old school variety. The 4 literacies we are promoting is essential to communication, visual, oral, spatial, and kinesthetic. Two more that are currently being proposed by other people, historical and cultural, and more than occasionally a few others. Now, the more each of these are developed, the more profound the understanding of the meaning on an intellectual, spiritual, and emotional level of any work. The difference in understanding the meaning of any artwork and the ability to discuss or to communicate that is based on what literacies have been developed. Are these relevant to other disciplines? Probably. Are they relevant to everyday life? We are bombarded by information in all 5 of these forms of communication, and we are affected by them. But can we, on a conscious level, discern how and why that information is affecting us? Or is the effect only subliminal? In the 1950s, Howard Johnson's restaurants, with their distinctive orange roofs, sprang up everywhere and were recognized by travelers as a place to eat with a known menu and known quality. Subliminally, orange equaled trustworthy food. I'm not going to say good, but as fast food places, McDonald's, Burger King, Hardee's, and others took over, they incorporated both red and yellow in their signs. Now, the 2 colors that make orange conveniently squished together quickly. So all of a sudden, the added, it was fast for the convenience, yes, with the added subliminal effect that people got hungry when they saw those 2 colors together. Interesting.
So how are we going to implement interdisciplinary literacies in our information literacy curricula? A few years ago, Mark and I and a faculty member from the USF Contemporary Art Museum partnered with the Honors College to devise a curricula for all freshmen in the Acquisitions of Knowledge class. So this isn't in my script. We actually did it at a place called World of Beer. Included are studios.
Not the class, that was the meeting.
The meeting was at the World of Beer.
Because that's where all good philosophers go.
So included in our visualization of all of this are studios. And so for the Honors College, there is a perception studio, a performance studio, and an information studio. These are all studios that are required for freshmen to take in the Honors College as and it's called Acquisition of Knowledge. Other studios have been added since then: a self and community interpretation studio, emotion and empathy studio, assignment, and a public discourse studio. The information studio includes online modules and learning activities which teach children or students to navigate the website, find their librarian, locate subject guides, and identify scholarly articles. Now, however, our proposal is to partner with teaching faculty to develop curricula and co-teach information literacy in conjunction with other literacies. So in my case, I'm teaching information literacy and visual literacy to a cohort of the AOK classes focused on the medical humanities. So there were 45 classes, but 5 of them were on the medical humanities, which is being supported by a grant from NIH. In the studio, the information studio, after going over rudimentary information about conducting a literature review, there are 2 hands-on activities that I and several other AOK instructors developed that we have the students do. First, several scholarly articles from a variety of disciplines that the instructors and I selected are distributed to the students, and they work in groups. This activity is an article analysis through visual observation. So we asked the students to consider the types of articles, for example. What's their discipline? what's the research or project type, whether it's theoretical or empirical, the style of writing, the overall outcomes, so on and so forth. Then we ask them to look for the overall composition, the main framework, the main components, the research methodology, and then the presentation tools, the statistical data, the diagrams, and the storytelling, for example. So the students had lovely discussions about the articles that they had visualized or had gone through this visual observation process. For the second activity, each student was given a database searching worksheet, and we talked about ideas for their research topics, identifying keywords, writing a search statement using Boolean logic, and identifying databases to search in based on the disciplines of their topics. I also asked them to look for scholarly articles on their topics that included visuals within the scholarly articles, sort of like the visuals told the story about what the article and the research was about, and that how those visuals supported their research topic. Eventually, my goal will be for the students to locate scholarly articles in which they'll be able to create their own visuals to support their own research.
Now, simultaneously, I was doing the performance studio, which all 45 of those sections got to do. And what I did with this, ahead of yourself on a seat stick dealer. So, we started off working from masks. I had them do some research, looking at masks, looking at visual images of masks, and they pulled in a variety of ones that interested them. And then we started talking about what those masks revealed and what they concealed about character, and explored the mask from that point of view. And they had to sort of develop a sense of the meaning of the mask through that. We then took that and they had to put the mask on. We fabricated masks like those. They had to put the mask on and basically embody the character. So it became an embodied research where they had to pick up and take on movement, vocal, other qualities. And then we started doing some improvisation with those, of taking two different masked characters and just giving them a very simple scene to try to play together. Most of these students are biomed and engineering. So this is like way out of their wheelhouse, but incredibly informative for them in how they looked at things. And that whole idea of an embodied experience is not something that was really in their wheelhouse at all, but they liked it, they enjoyed it.
One of the strategic directions in our department is to incorporate additional literacies into the information literacy curricula and increase the reach of our instructional efforts by working with faculty and other campus partners to expand information literacy instruction to include other literacies within the ACRL framework in order to reach a wider undergraduate population. We propose that librarians could teach with instructors in other disciplines in a 1.5-hour literacy workshop, like I did with the AOK instructors, and students would complete a quiz and a project. And this would become a prerequisite to taking a particular course. So we plan to start exploring and partnering with instructors who employ various literacies in their courses.
So what's the next stage for this as a strategic plan? In order to teach students to be multiliterate or transliterate, what resources need to be available?
And what should the library collection look like? How do we teach students to use them?
And who should be teaching?
This is an exploration which may result in a radical paradigm shift in the way we educate students in the process of acquiring information.
So, back to the title of our presentation and what the Oysters learned too late. The theme of this conference is a line from Lewis Carroll's The Walrus and the Carpenter. And in that poem, the walrus and carpenter invite the oysters to take a walk on the beach. And when the oysters tire and can walk no further, the walrus and the carpenter eat them. The oysters had focused only on the text of what the walrus and the carpenter had said, and did not have the visual, oral, kinesthetic, or spatial literacy that would have led them to decline the invitation. And with the cuts to arts education, both K-12 as well as in higher education, I fear that we are in the process of creating a generation of human oysters. So, this is where we are in our process right now. We have recognized and rationalized the necessity of developing a method to teach the pretextual communication literacies, and to develop collections of both textual and non-textual items that support and expand the understanding of those literacies. And we've begun the process of communicating that. We will welcome any recommendations to reach either of those goals, or accept any questions, comments, observations, compliments, or complaints. The floor is open.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions or would like to add to that, or are you doing anything similar at your institution? No?
Excuse me, sorry.
Is this interesting to you?
Yes.
Do you think this is the direction that we should be going with what we teach our students, information literacy? You were going to add something, and I forget what it was. Oh, we had this discussion. So what would happen was we got really interested in this topic several months ago, and we wrote a proposal to the dean of the libraries about it, and then it became incorporated into the strategic directions for our department. But we would come home and we would discuss it over a glass of wine, like as we were relaxing, and we would have these great conversations. And then we would say the next morning, like, what were we talking about? So we did.
Perhaps the flaw in husband and wife research.
But anyway, thank you for coming. If you don't have any other comments or something that you'd like to contribute, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.